Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the SOM TV podcast. My name is Jason Wise. I want to thank all of you for joining today. On today's episode, I'm going to have our old friend, Jonah Beer, on, and we're going to talk about famous cameos in wine. I believe this is our fourth or fifth time we have gone to movies and TV shows where they showcase a wine in them as part of the story or a cameo, and then we grade them on how they did in doing that. Before we get to that episode, which I hope you all enjoy, I want to remind everybody that our brand new film, Ghosts of Napa Valley, is coming very, very soon, September 3rd, to theaters, starting with Napa, with LA to follow. You can get tickets at somfilms.com. But also, if you're a SOM TV subscriber, it's going to be streaming with tons of extras on October 11th, starting October 11th. So go to somtv.com to subscribe. Without further ado, my friend and your friend, Jonah Beer. Mr. Jonah Beer, this is Christmas for me. Merry Christmas to you too, because for you and I to talk about movies and know that there's 4 people listening, but those 4 people, all genetically related to you and I, are married to us at bare minimum. They care.
They do. They do.
And
they should. Yeah.
And that matters.
It matters a lot. It matters. Well, Merry Christmas to you too, my friend, because this is always a highlight for me.
Yes, of course, of course. Well, this is wine. I don't want to hear anybody yelling at me that this is a wine podcast and that we're not talking about wine, because this is wine. We're back for another wine cameos. Is this our 4th or 5th? Which one? Where are we at here?
I don't know. It might be 5.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's incredible.
We'll just ask your mother later. Don't worry about it.
We'll ask my mom. My mom's.
I'll text her.
Everybody who's listened to our podcast, they know the drill on this. This is where we find wines that have made cameos in films, sometimes TV shows. We have only movies on today's pod. And they either have to be surprising, pivotal to the plot, or part of the movie in some way, or a mystery as to like what wine it is, as was the case with Jaws when we did that one, trying to figure out what wine is on the table. That's the drill.
And I think that what I have learned from our many podcasts in this is that, number one, I think that we have single-handedly boosted Northern exposure to the top of Amazon Prime streaming. I've gotten dozens of people to just be like, I've gotten back into that show and I love it. So, kudos to us for helping out Rob Morrow and Joshua Brand and all the people behind the great shows. So I think we can do it today for 4 great films.
I truly feel like you deserve all the credit, and I really just don't deserve any on Northern Exposure.
I had to explain what Northern Exposure was to you again.
Yes.
But yeah,
well, the other good thing is too, like, I think our audience consists of people who are 22 and people who are 60.
That's true. It's great. It's a great demo.
And so, we're crushing the 60 to 64.
We're missing the meaty part where they spend. Other than that, we're doing great.
All right, this is going to be a tough one to focus. We're going to do it. We're going to stay focused. My first movie is a movie I love. It's a movie that some have issues with, but I deeply love it. But more importantly, the wine in this particular film sets off a chain of events that has ripples through an entire franchise of the most important horror films ever made. In fact, the poster behind me is one of those. So this is the prequel, quote unquote, to Alien. It's called Prometheus. Some of you listening have seen Prometheus, some haven't. I want to tell you a quick story before I talk about the wine in it. It is a movie I took my wife to see when she was 8 months pregnant. And if you have seen Prometheus, you know that this is probably, out of a billion movies, the worst film to see when you are 8 months pregnant. Because there is a scene with a mechanical surgery machine that a woman uses to have a creature removed from her body. That is unbelievable. And my wife, though she can handle almost any movie, was not happy with me for taking her to go see Prometheus while she was 8 months pregnant with my second child.
She should not be. I mean, we've all know she's a saint for just sticking with you through the normal stuff you do. I can't imagine what you were thinking, but we'll talk about that offline.
So, little background on Prometheus really quick. It's Ridley Scott directed, same as the director of Alien. It is a quote-unquote prequel to Alien. It's basically where these giant space jockeys came from. There's a scene in Alien where they find a corridor in this abandoned ship when they get a distress signal. There's a guy at the helm, or a giant, large person-ish humanoid. Well, this is the story of who that is. Okay. In Prometheus, you have a group of scientists trying to figure out if there's life on Earth, and there are all these things that have to do with Neolithic times. There are cave paintings and such, and apparently kind of like Chariots of the Gods or like Ancient Aliens. Like clearly they came to Earth and gave us technology or something. And they're finding the same drawing. So they head off to the stars. Well, this one character brings with him a huge amount of Ace of Spades champagne, the Jay-Z owned Armand de Brignac champagne.
How far would you go to get what you came all this way for? Your answers. What would you be willing to do?
Anything and everything.
It's worth drinking to, I'd imagine.
Here's mud in your eye, pal.
Good health.
What year is this supposed to be set in, Prometheus?
2089.
2020. Well, we're really ascribing a long longevity here to the Ace of Spades brand. That's
We're going to talk about whether this was a good choice or makes any sense. I want to hold that just to say.
I'm sorry. I'm learning as we go.
What happens in this is they drink this champagne to celebrate certain things. And there's one particular scene. There's, of course, like all alien movies you've ever seen, there's an android involved. And often the androids and aliens, all these movies have an ulterior motive often. They're bad or they have something they're trying to do. And this particular android is very interested in other life besides humans. And he takes this black goo that they find. It's it's a complicated story, whatever.
I understand.
It's like this life film, evil, spontaneous life gel type stuff that they find in these eggs. Okay, look, in these like ceramic things, doesn't matter. And he puts it in this guy's champagne de Brignac, his Ace of Spades wine that he is drinking. This guy drinks it. This life goo gets into his body, transforms him, and starts making him very sick because it's taking over his cells, breaking down his cells, and he's becoming something different. And this particular moment, if you believe in the canon of Alien and Aliens and all the movies that came after, even the god-awful Alien versus Predators and all that crap, if you believe in all this stuff, Ace of Spades is the reason the xenomorph and aliens exist at all. I can't even believe what I just said. It is the dumbest thing. I love, behind me, if you've ever seen any of the conversations I do or whatever in my office, I have a signed Alien poster. The guy who wrote it, Dan O'Bannon, was a professor of mine. Alien is one of my absolute favorite films. I am obsessed with that and its sequel, Aliens. Prometheus has its detractors. I think it's one of the most beautifully shot digital film ever made. I love Ridley Scott. This makes no fucking sense. Why? Why? I mean, it's fine to put this goo in a drink and have this guy drink it. That's not what the issue is.
Right. No. That feels like that's not the issue. I feel like the plot points that have a few holes in it are, one, how much champagne do they take on this journey into the stars?
They just say there's a bunch in the freezing, like cold storage of the hold of this giant ship. That I don't know how many bottles. He may mention that it's in the hundreds. It's enough to get them through this like multi-year journey. I have a couple questions for you, Jonah. I know that you do not like champagne. Am I correct on this?
Okay, now before I start getting a flood of text messages and emails, it's not that I don't like champagne. I understand champagne. I can see good from bad. I know the really good ones. It's just not my preferred drink.
Fair.
I would rather go for I'd rather go for Chablis.
All right, fair. But you know enough about champagne to understand that they are fighting climate change in a big way at the moment.
Yeah.
Right. And it requires a pretty lower temperature for champagne to be what it is. Do you think champagne's going to exist in 2089, let alone Ace of Spades?
Boy, that's two loaded questions in there at once, right? Like, let's take the second part first. Ace of Spades? No, is it even out now? Like, not
only is it out, I'm looking at it. $300 a bottle. Instacart will deliver it to me for $287.
Wow.
Have you ever had Ace of Spades?
I have, because I've been to a strip joint. So yes, I've had Ace of Spades, and I've had a sip and thought to myself, well, there you go.
It's fine. No, I mean, it's all of these. I have on a previous podcast said no wine should ever cost more than $175 a bottle.
Right.
And I stand by it. I don't care. This is, it's a very shiny bottle.
It's very shiny. It's gold. It's like dipped in gold, right?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if I doubt it's gold.
Gold coloring. Sorry there. Didn't even get you too excited. Like you can go through the recycling bin and make a fortune on the Ace of Spades wrapper. I don't think that 2089 Ace of Spades I think Ace of Base will be back in 2089, making a comeback. But I'm not going to sign off on Ace of Spades. And then the really horrible question is the champagne one. And I'm an optimist when it comes to all of these things. And so I'm going to say yes. I think that they'll continue to evolve and learn about what they need to do with pruning cycles and trying to just get the grapes ripe earlier so they can maintain that acidity and make it happen. So I'm going to be an optimist on champagne in 2089. I'm going to be a pessimist on Ace of Spades.
Yeah, okay. There's no way champagne is going to change their style in the next 50 years.
No way.
But I think the Ace of Spades thing is pretty funny. I'm going to give this, because now we grade these films, how well they portray the wine. I'm seriously going to go a D+ here. Champagne, I believe he would have. Ace of Spades, I just don't understand the logic in that pick. Makes no sense. I could have seen anything.
I could have seen so many other. I mean, it's just. Is there a stripper pole on the spaceship? Let me ask you that question.
I love that. That's. I wonder if that's what their like marketing team is like. I want someone to think strippers, or like a club, like bottle service when they think of this.
Yeah, right.
I have the utmost respect for Jay-Z, but this is an odd choice in a Ridley Scott science fiction body horror film. Okay.
I like the fact that you went for a money grab slightly less big than Ridley Scott did when he went with Ace of Spades as the champagne that will board the flight. So nicely done. You did a good one.
Now we're down to 4 listeners. What's your first movie?
Both of mine I'm realizing are a little more old school for today that I've chosen. The first one is a film that I think. Yes, we're doing a wine podcast, and yes, this is about wine, and we'll talk about wine in this movie, but this movie to me represents almost all the aspects of what Som TV and Som TV streaming have been about. Like, it's restaurants, it's food, it's the restaurant culture, it's how hard it is to pull these things off. And it's a 1996 comedy called Big Night.
Such a good movie.
Night.
Hey, so, chipping up.
Yes, sir.
Anything you need, anything, you let me know.
Yes.
I bought a boat.
You bought a boat?
I bought a boat. Sail away into the sunset. So, here is tonight, yes?
Tonight.
Hey, maestro! That fucking sauce, unbelievable.
What can I say?
Someone get you a compliment, you say thank you.
Grazie.
Hey, prego.
You know this one, yes?
Such a good movie. I mean, It's such an underrated. I don't know if it's underrated, just maybe not seen enough, but
yeah. Well, I mean, you got Stanley Tucci. Like, I think really kind of like you see this kind. Maybe he was this man before, but when you watch this film, you see everything that's happened now in this Second Life career with searching for Italy and his love of food and wine and the Italian culture, and then Tony Shalhoub, who's just brilliant in this film. And it's got a cast: Isabella Rossellini, Minnie Driver, Campbell Scott, Allison Janney. It's a film that's packed with good people, and it's a great premise. And for anyone that's not seen it, please, after this podcast, not now, but after, when you're probably driving, let's be honest, when you get home and you turn this off, you gotta find this film streaming somewhere and watch it. Do it at night when you can have a glass of Italian wine, maybe make some pasta. But it's a struggling 2 brothers, Primo and Secondo, right? Perfect names, first and second, fresh off the boat from Italy, running a restaurant and trying to make a go of this Italian restaurant that's doing kind of true Italian. And they're just having a struggle. And they're about to go out of business when a neighboring restaurateur running a restaurant called Pasquale's Italian Grotto says he'll get Louis Prima to come for dinner. And then
that's right,
this
the
sets
singer.
up. Yes, exactly. This sets up the big night where like they're inviting everybody. Like they've got newspaper coming. They've got anyone they can get to come to the restaurant. Going to meet Louis Prima. And there's going to be this big dinner and this big scene. And spoiler alert, Louis Prima never shows up. And you watch the brothers kind of like fight through first they serve this amazing dinner, which we'll come back to, and then fighting over their future and what they're doing. And the whole thing ends with them making an omelet, like back in the kitchen the next morning after this long night and just making the most perfect omelet. And it's a brilliant film that's so focused on food and wine and restaurant culture that I just can't get enough of it.
It's such a really, really, really funny film. It's a really good film. Anybody who's in the restaurant industry, you couldn't be more right in that this is probably one of the best. Like, take a look with actors at how funny the restaurant business is and how much bullshit it is and how much heart there is in it and all this stuff. And like, then you have two of the all-time character actors of all time. Of all time. I mean, Stanley Tucci, people don't think about this, but if you've ever seen like Road to Perdition, where he plays like Al Capone's attorney, or like any of these little things where he pops up and steals the movie, and then Tony Shalhoub and all the Coen Brothers films. These are a time where you have classic character actors who get to be the main stars. It is really, really excellent. I love this film. What's your wine cameo, though?
There's two things. One, I have to give a shout out to the food cameo, the timpano, the great dish that they make like in the bowl with like the almost like the pie crust that you fill with pasta, penne and the red sauce and the sausage and the meatballs and the egg and the salami. And like that dish, just watching them make it and cut it, like I'm desperate to try one. So next time you're up in Napa, we're going to get a group together, make the timpano, and that'll be great. It's generic Brunello di Montalcino, right? And it's Brunello. You get a couple shots close enough up on the bottle where you can see it's Brunello, but you can't quite make out the brand. It might be Chateau Nonsense, to steal a line from one of our previous guests. But
that's right, David S. Ward, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because they've got it lined up they're all drinking like martinis beforehand, but when it's time for dinner and they're ready to eat, the corks are popping and I mean the wine is flowing. And then the longer that Louis Prima doesn't show up and the more drunken and debaucherous it gets, it's just drinking Brunello out of the bottle, dancing around with bottles in their hands. It's this kind of like, it brings it all together. The wine plays that part where it bridges everything from the party to the dinner. And I just think it's a great bit of Brunello's the right cast, the right character for it. It's for where these guys are from. It's perfect.
It's an upper class night. You'd have an upper class wine. I'm with you.
Exactly. You see in other scenes in the earlier where there's the Chianti in the straw bottle, but this, they really stepped it up and they're going for it. It's well cast, I think, because it's what you'd expect from that group.
I love it. What would you rate this movie as far as its wine knowledge and how well it did for what the wine is in the movie?
I think I'm going to give it a B+ because I think that there's a lot of moments when wine could have played a bigger part when Stanley Tucci's trying to buy cheap liquor because they're almost broke. And he's like trying to buy it off the back of a truck from like two delivery guys. And it's just generic liquor. It's like, oh, come on. He'd be a little more interested in what he was buying. And then, but they hit it when they sit down for dinner. So I'm going to give it a B+.
That's a great pick. Mine is, I hope that people would not consider this old school. If you've not seen this movie, it's in my top maybe 3 comedies of all time. I was raised on this. My mother would go out and just leave this on the TV. This was my babysitter. The movie is called Caddyshack. I do love this movie so much. Caddyshack is a classic and it has an amazing cast, but you wouldn't think about it from a wine standpoint. It is a movie that is more a series of vignettes and skits tied together to a
loosely
plot where people play at the end. I love this. I mean, I can quote this entire film. I'm going to try not to spend too much time about this. It's sort of, what do they call it? The slobs versus the snobs. And at the end, they play to save a golf course, but that's never the actual plot ever.
No.
And then there's like they're trying to kill a varmint the whole time, and that's never really the plot. And you have what is clearly a learning disabled groundskeeper who is one of the funniest characters of all time. And then you have Ted Knight from the Mary Tyler Moore Show, who is one of the funniest. I mean, it's so inappropriate and yet so aware of itself, and it's so great.
It explains a lot about you that you were raised by this film. I feel like, if anything describes the parenting technique that yielded you, it's Caddyshack on repeat. So
I'm telling you right now, it is.
Who knows to your mom? When I text her later tonight about this is going to be so good.
You need to get out of my mom's DM. You get my mom's name out of your mouth.
Listen. I feel like we've got a real winner here, but I want to think in my head which scene it is, and I think I know. So I'll let you know if I got it afterwards.
So the scene that I'm going to take, there are several wine scenes, people drinking wine. You could see the bottle on the table, but there's really only one wine scene in this, and it is at night, a scene that makes no sense. Feels like it's completely shoehorned into the film and yet steals the entire movie. It's not in the script. It's completely ad-libbed. And there's an amazing backstory behind it. And it is when Chevy Chase accidentally hits a ball into what he thinks is a storage shed on the golf course, but it's where Bill Murray's character of Carl, who's the groundskeeper, lives.
It's his house,
apparently.
yeah.
And he's got like a bench from a car that he sleeps on, and he's growing marijuana, a hybridized grass that he has created, and he's smoking weed in there. And it's got very famous lines, but none of this was written. It's all improvised. And the two of these guys did not like each other. It's a very famous scene because they don't appear in any scene together at all. And when they finished the movie, they said, well, look, these two guys are the most famous guys that have ever come out of Saturday Night Live, maybe besides Eddie Murphy, and they have to share a scene. So what they did is they said, let's put them together and see, and you guys swallow your pride and don't be dicks to each other. And so they have this scene, and it's just insanity. Producer John, do you mind playing this scene here? Let's set this up for a second.
Sure, let's have a little bit of this. I get the big Bob Marley joint. Look at this. Here, try this.
Carl, I really don't do this very often.
You're gonna love this. Is dynamite hack. Watch out for this.
Maybe one drag, I gotta go.
It's a little harsh. But here, cannonball it. And then one more of these right on top of it. Cannonball! Cannonball coming. Cannonball coming. No!
Basically, they're smoking weed and the cannonball, and they're smoking weed and drinking out of a jug wine is what Carl is telling him to do. And it's just back and forth with smoking and drinking this stuff. And, should I really do it? Cannonball. And he keeps doing it. Well, if you look, so I'm thinking like, what is this jug wine? What is the jug wine that he has? I screenshotted it. I looked at it real closely. There's no really good prints of this film. So it's not like it's like in 4K and you can just read everything. So it's Paul Masson jug wine that he is a giant jug that he's doing. And it's hysterical, the imagery of it. So really quick, I'm going to ask you as a Napa guy, what's Paul Masson? Can you tell me a little bit about this company?
What is it? I mean, I feel like that's another loaded question. What is it? I mean, this was one of the great American inventions of wine, which was, if I'm not mistaken, these were the guys that were still calling it Chablis up until probably recently. You had Hardy Burgundy, and it was a classic. It's the 1 gallon jug on the bottom shelf at the grocery store. Had the handle in it that you could put your finger through, right? Pick it up on the forearm and give it the old chuggaroony.
Well, I just know Paul Masson from the very famous Orson Welles commercial where he was really drunk.
Oh, yeah. Well, and, we will share no wine before it's time. Was that the one?
Yes, yeah. I think so. Yeah. In fact, for no reason other than we're completely off the rails, let's play the Paul Masson commercial with Orson Welles.
102, take 2.
The French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There is a California champagne by Paul Masson, inspired by that same French excellence. It's fermented in the bottle, and like the best French champagne, it's vintage dated. So Paul Masson.
Here's my rating for this. Caddyshack gets an A+.
100%.
Could not have picked a better wine. Could not have had a better scene for it to be in. And if you think about the cannonball, what makes this thing so funny is he's smoking weed, taking a drink, and you would think like a lesser director than Harold Ramis would have had it be like vodka or whiskey or bourbon or something. Instead, it's jug wine, which says everything you need to know about this groundskeeper is that he went to the corner grocery store and bought the cheapest thing he could find, which was this. And so
with volume.
So Caddyshack.
Oh, A+. A+. This is a brilliant choice. In my head, it was going to be the scene where Ted Knight is trying to christen his boat with a bottle of champagne, but instead he knocks the bowsprit off. He breaks the boat instead of the bottle. And
so
I was
great.
Like, if you can tell me what that champagne is, that would be such a great call.
I thought about it, but the scene just
This is brilliant. This is brilliant.
You have a pool over there, right?
Yeah,
I have a pond too. A pool and a pond. Pond would be better for you, Carl.
A+.
All right, so your fourth, which I actually know what it is, the fourth film,
and listener, the reason I had to tell Jason ahead of time was because for fear that either A, he would like this too much, or B, that this would be turned into a 6-hour long podcast. So we needed to prep each other for what we're about to talk about. And it is The Godfather. And
Is that a film or a show? What is that?
Yeah, just let's go ahead and let me explain it to Jason here. No, I mean, listen, everyone knows this one. No one needs background on The Godfather, but this movie we both adore. Like there's 50 wine scenes inside this film, right? But the one that I want to talk about, and the one where I think not only
we could literally, not to cut you off, but we could do an entire episode or more on just The Godfather, especially Godfather 1 and 2. There are more wine scenes in that than there are in Sideways. I mean, it's incredible. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
And maybe we will. That's an idea for the next time. But I think that this scene is not only important because of the wine, but I'm going to even call this waiter a sommelier. I'm going to give this waiter Sam title because him being there and opening the wine in that moment stretches this tension. And it's the scene when they're going to Louis' restaurant and Michael is going to assassinate McCluskey and Sollozzo. And so it's the scene in the restaurant when Michael's just arrived. You know, McCluskey does, like they've gotten to the table. He had frisked him earlier in the car. McCluskey's just excited about the food. Like he's tucking the napkin into his shirt. You know, he's such a perfectly cast, arrogant, asshole in this scene.
How's the Italian food in this restaurant?
Good. Try the veal. It's the best in the city.
I'll have it.
Capito? I'm gonna speak Italian to Mike.
Go ahead.
Mi dispiace.
I'm like a rubber band pulled back right now. I want to talk so bad.
I know. I'm going to give you a second.
No.
I'm going to give you a second.
I need to shut up.
So why I love the waiter and the wine is this is right when Sollozzo and Michael, and you can see Michael's not even really listening to him yet. And they start to talk, and then the waiter comes over with the wine. It's 1938 Italian table wine. It's red, but it's served from a Riesling bottle, right? The waiter takes the proper amount of time to cut the foil and pull the and the whole time you've got Michael Corleone and Sollozzo just waiting to talk. And the tension's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the focus is right in on Sollozzo. And you can see he's just ready to get into this with Michael. And the waiter's just there doing his thing, popping it, presenting the cork, pouring the sample. He takes a sip, he passes the glass to Michael. And then the waiter leaves and the wine sits right there, dead center in the frame. And it just sits there like it's imposing between the two of them for the entire scene until, of course, Michael excuses himself for the bathroom. So I feel like this is not only an important wine scene, but it's one of the more pivotal scenes in the film.
Oh, it is the reason, obviously, he goes to Sicily following. I'd love to talk about the movie. That's an 8-hour conversation, but it's the reason he goes to Sicily. It's the reason he meets the young bride. It's the reason she is killed. It's the reason that he gets back with Kay. It's the reason. I mean, every single thing that happens in the movie happens because of this. And I think that the movie it's not out of the realm to say that this is probably the most important film ever made. I mean, from a standpoint of every direction. I don't mean, and I don't know that it's the best film ever made, but if it's not, it's in the top 2 or 3, maybe, Godfather 2's in that conversation. And I think that this movie does something that is really interesting, is that it plays with stereotypes. It doesn't play with them. There's straight stereotypes. I mean, Sterling Hayden's character, who for you younger people listening was a very famous actor, very famous. I mean, he was in Dr. Strangelove, Stanley Kubrick's film. He was in a number of films that were truly, truly important to the history of American cinema. But he always played a kind of brute guy. He was always this guy, and he plays this Irish cop. And I happen to be from Cleveland. Everyone can drink because I said it. And I know Irish cops. There are Irish cops in Cleveland. I mean, here in LA or in San Francisco, or, those of you that just live like in some, town on the ocean or wherever the hell you live,
where you can see
you don't
water.
know. Yeah. You don't know what an Irish cop is. But if you know what an Irish cop is, Sterling Hayden is that on steroids. He's just like, they got good food there.
Yes.
And he's just like, the minute he walks in, he's just eating bread. He's eating bread and he orders the veal and he's like, is the veal good? I'll get the veal. And he's supposed to be there like handling business, but all he gives a shit about is eating. And like, you know, and there's this whole like underlying thing with like Italians and Irish, and the Italians are very Italian in this movie. By Italian standards, they're like on steroids too.
Right.
And so,
right.
but this movie does something brilliant with that. But what it also does is it makes wine part of the table every time. And I think that that is so great because the film was actually made by Italians. You know, Mario Puzo wrote it and Francis Ford Coppola directed it. And, you know, I mean, most of the actors are not Italian in it. I mean, Brando's not Italian and
Right.
James Caan's a Jew, I think. I mean, like none of this stuff makes any sense. But that being said, it really feels authentic. Like it truly does. I love this. I mean, it's stupid to say I love this movie. I mean, it's like being like, yeah, Ferraris are nice cars. You know, it's the stupidest thing in the world, but it's that good. This
It
movie
is that good. And Ferraris are nice cars. But I think that just because it's obvious doesn't make it less true. There's some spots in there that I love where the wine is, you know, kind of lubricating the scene, right?
Mhm.
And you can
Yep.
see, again, McCluskey's just so not focused. They're starting to speak Italian. Of course, there's no
Yeah.
subtitles.
Do you mind if
know.
we speak Italian? And he starts talking, right? That's right.
It's so good, but I love the fact that the bottle and the wine is never not just as much in frame as the two guys. Even when they're shooting over Sollozzo's shoulder and you just got that kind of tight in on Michael Corleone, you can still see the edge of the bottle. It's a great scene. The wine is perfect. The vintage is spot on for the time that the movie's taking place. And I got to say, give it an A+.
Yeah, I would give you an A+ on this one. I think across the board, Godfather gets an A+. On another pod, we'll have to do with all the alcohol in the Godfather films and how it's approached and scene by scene, because I do think, you know, whether you know it, admit it, or even care, the way alcohol and wine and beer and this stuff is done in films builds the way we look at it as a society, you know? And I really think that, like, you know, just the aperitifs at the beginning when it's, you know, it's the day of my daughter's wedding and he hands, you know, they're pouring a glass for everybody who comes in. There's something incredible about this whole process in this film, the way that they approach alcohol as a necessary thing, you know, not the way like Mad Men does it, where you're just drinking, you know, scotch all day while you're at work.
Right.
But more that like it's socially part of talking and eating and being a part of things. I just think that's a phenomenal pick. I mean, I have been afraid to choose The Godfather on every single one of these ones that we've done. I think The Godfather 2 has a couple of my favorite wine cameos ever committed, you know, with the peppers and the sardines, you know, but yeah. So
first of all, your Italian accent is choice.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
I'm sure it's really,
Wow.
yeah. It's me and Kate Blanchett for the Oscar. I don't know what to say other than I love doing this. And if you people, you lovely humans who listen to this podcast, like us doing this, please egg us on because I want to do more. Let us know. Leave a great review. Do whatever it takes. Mom, I don't know how many burner accounts you have, but put a lot of good reviews on our podcasts.
It is a lot of fun, and I think that it does, to your point, all these things about how wine is and it's portrayed in films for this young. I mean, you're from Cleveland, I'm from Indiana. I learned more about this stuff from just watching it in movies and it made me want to understand it and explore it. Fantastic.
Jonah, I want to say thank you. I want to thank everybody who is still here right now. And I adore this, man. Thank you for doing this. If you like this podcast, you like these episodes, give us a great review if you can. Don't forget, Ghost of Napa Valley is coming, so go to somfilms.com to grab tickets if you're in Napa or Los Angeles. And if you are not, you better be a Som TV subscriber because October 11th it's coming there. So go to somtv.com to do that. We thank you all so much. Watch something great and drink something even better. Talk soon.